Hello, my beautiful plant people. How are we today? Welcome back to PCM. If we haven't met before, I am Sam from Plant Collector Melbourne, and today's video is how we can get started with rare plants. So this video is for those of you that may want to dabble into more of the rarer stuff or the harder to find / exotic plants that are harder to take care of. And before you embark on your journey, here are some tips that I would like to share with you guys. And even if you have your plant collection already, there might be some little tips or tricks or more like insightful comments that might be able to help you along your journey as well. So my friends, are you ready to embark on your rare plant journey? Let's do this thing. You! Let's start off with some plants that I can recommend to you guys that I think are easy to look after. These plants definitely have a lot to teach, as well as they're not going to break the bank. It is definitely a good place to get started. So I have two genuses that I would recommend. I'm sure there are many genuses that can help you along the journey that have a lot to teach and that are very easy, but these are the ones that I can recommend to you guys with confidence because I also learned a lot from these plants at the beginning of my journey. So the first ones are, of course, philodendron. I think a lot of our plant lovers really connect with philodendron because they're easy to access, they're not hard to take care of, they have a lot to teach us, they can definitely tolerate a lot more let's say like error in watering or humidity or light, things like that. So they definitely can adapt to their surroundings and their environment. So philodendron are one of the easiest plants in my opinion to get started with. So some examples, of course, I really love the glorious or the gloriosum. There's Soderoy, Dean McDowell. There is just so much that you can even try. One of my personal favorites, of course, is this philodendron plougmanii, which I think are super duper cute, especially this round form. I truly believe that this plant has taught me a lot, and it was one of the first ones that I had when I first started or embarked on my rarer plant journey. So that is some recommendations for philos, and the other one is monstera. So I don't know about you guys, but my very first plant, or one of my very first plants, was a monstera, Jessa deliciosa from, I'm pretty sure it was either Bunnings. No, where did I get that from? No, it was a nursery. I actually got that from a nursery, and definitely that plant taught me a lot about propagation, and again can tolerate very much like low, bright, low watering, more watering. Yes, monstera are definitely a great spot to start as well. I would not recommend going for like a variegated monstera off the bat just because they are definitely more on the expensive side, and if you are learning, then it might die, and it might be it feels bad if it actually were to cark it. So other recommendations like a Monstera Peru or Stanleyana, a Dubia, a Stilipicana. There are definitely ones that are easy to look after and are very beautiful. So my recommendations are philos and monstera. So the things I'm about to share with you guys is as if I went back in time before I started my rare plant journey and I was about to go on ahead, and I said to my current self, what advice or what could you share with me before I embark on this journey? And so I'm doing this video talking to my younger self, as well as sharing it with you guys. All right, so we have 8 different things that I wish to tell you or share with you. So let us get started. So the first one is give yourself time and grace, because just before you start this journey, I think that it's really important to understand that plants do die in the process, and that might be because of external factors, it might be because of us, and that we have this learning curve of trying to understand plants and specific plants, tropical plants that we may never have done before previously. So giving yourself grace if things do die, or giving it another shot just because you've had a bit of a setback. Because if there is like an understanding before you go into the journey that there will be some plant loss or plant death, that when it comes up, you expect it, and not just thinking that everything is easy and that all these plants will thrive and live, because unfortunately that may not be the case. Is that give yourself grace for that learning curve, to really have that time to invest in your plants and to understand them. Number 2 is get supplies. Now, this might be quite simple, but if you've never really looked after plants before, let me tell you what you will need. So your supplies will look a little bit of like a watering can, some fertilizer, some media and substrate. So that might be, depending on what you're growing, but like potting mix, orchid bark, perlite, pumice, everything under the sun that you may want to mix up and put into your plants. Of course, some pest management stuff. So these are things like sprays or granules. Actually, and going into my past point, is that pests are also very inevitable. So let's add that onto the learning curve and giving yourself grace because I forgot. But yes, and last but not least is that something that some of you may not think of, particularly if you're just starting this plant journey and you're going into more aroids and tropical plants, then maybe, potentially you may need a humidifier. In my experience, if you are going to get a humidifier, I do recommend getting a larger one, because if you get a little one, you're going to have to top it up and refill it quite often. Again, depends on your space. So if you are doing something like in a small area, let's say like it's in a Millsbow IKEA cabinet, then you only need a small humidifier. You're just going to need to frequently keep topping that up. But if it's in a room, I do suggest a larger humidifier. And on top of that, I would also recommend one that has a top loader, which means that you don't have to like take off the unit and fill it, like flip it and fill it. It's just that you can just put water in it from the top. That is one of my biggest tips for y'all. Learn where your plants originate from. This is one of the most groundbreaking things that you can understand or try to think about when it comes to your collection and what plants you're bringing in. So, thinking about tropical plants, where they come from, where do they originate from, and think about all of its care needs under the sun. So think about light, think about humidity, think about how often does it get watered. Where does it sit on the forest? Does it sit on the floor? Is it an epiphyte? Is it somewhere in the mountains? Like, if you know what the environment of that plant is, where it naturally comes from, if you replicate that, then you are going to keep your plant very happy and thriving, because that is what you optimally want to create in that environment. So, for example, a varicosum can be at like higher altitude, higher humidity, but on the cooler side. So, if you have a collection that you're in a greenhouse and it gets too hot, in my experience, in my personal experience, I've actually cooked my varicosum because the greenhouse got too warm. So they actually do a lot better in like a cooler environment. Not freezing cold, so don't get me wrong, but it is cooler than your typical other aroids. Number 4, work out your deal breakers and what care you want and can provide. So there are 2 approaches that you can go here. So you can either look at the space that you currently have and where you're going to have your collection or your plants and assess the environment that it has. So does it have good light? Is it low light? Is the humidity great? Is there airflow? Is there not? Just having a good idea of what environment you currently have, then you can get plants that actually suit that environment. The other way around is that if there are plants that you enjoy that require different environments, so for example, your space may have low light, doesn't have good airflow, and low humidity, in which case you can get a fan, you can get a humidifier, and you can get supplement lights. So you can go that way and see that if you can change or alternate your environment to suit the plants that you wish, or you can look at the space that you currently have and then dictate and grab the plants that are suited to that space. Number 6, organize a watering schedule. So Some people may get this confused. This is not to say, like for example, if I organized myself to have a watering schedule of like a Wednesday and a Sunday, it doesn't mean that I water all the plants on a Wednesday and a Sunday. These are just check-in points. So what I mean by that is in your plant collection, let's say it's a designated Wednesday, you will look at all your plants and whether that's like lifting up the pot or looking at the plants and seeing whether they need a water if they're drooping and whatnot, and then watering on those days. Some people would water all their plants on the Wednesday and the Sunday. But the problem with that is that all plants are really different. So if your plant is like in a smaller pot, then it's going to need more frequent watering than a bigger plant in a big pot, like an adult plant. And alternatively, depending on, I guess, the species, some plants love water and some plants do not like being wet for a long period of time. So a good example of this is like a colocasia, where they're literally like swamp plants that are bogged in water. So they really love a lot of water. Whereas if you did that to, let's say, I guess philodendron don't like being bogged, otherwise they get root rot. So philos are more on the let me dry out side, and they can tolerate being dry for a longer period of time than other aroids or other plants. So check in and doing some water scheduling is a great way to keep on top of all the plants and their needs, especially if you've got a really big collection. So I find that it's nice to have a little bit of structure, and then whether you keep to it or not is up to you, but at least the intention is there. We have two more. Number 7. This is more of just like a reminder. If I could tell past Sam this, I actually need to tell myself this currently because I always forget, is that watering changes throughout the year. So when I say that is definitely to do with the seasons, and also like light and warmth. So in summer, of course, you're going to be watering more than in winter. So for example, we have just finished winter and we're heading into spring. And during winter, I would be checking in with my plants at least once a week, or watering them. Nowadays, we are transitioning into spring and I am needing to water more. But I think that transition is always like I forget, and then the plants will be telling me because there'll be like yellow leaves if I've overwatered, or that there'll be crispiness and like sad leaves, and then you're like, oh no, I need to water you more. So younger Sam and current Sam needs to know that watering does change throughout the year. And last but not least, which is something that may seem a bit abstract, but I would love to put out there onto social media and the internet and into your beautiful plant-loving brain, is that listen to your plants and learn their language. Sam, what could you possibly mean by that? And it is only now that I'm really understanding, not only do I kind of understand plants from experience, and I also understand plants more in like the chemical, biological way because I did science in uni, but I'm now understanding that plants totally have their own way of telling us and their own language of what they need. And throughout your journey, hopefully that you guys will start to sense or feel this language or these symptoms, like if a plant has yellow leaves or brown leaves, whether it's crispy, whether it's soggy, whether the plant's leaves are down and sad and doesn't need a water, or are they like super happy? Are they leaning towards light and asking for more light? I wonder if any of you can also relate or are starting to understand your own plant's language. And that is when I think like peace lilies do it very drastically, but very obviously, in that their whole leaves, like if they were like a human, they would be like, ugh. And then as soon as you water them, they are up. And I truly believe that plants have this language that we just need to be in tune to. So for example, if a leaf is like thin rather than thick, whether it's really strong and sturdy or whether they're really easy to to manipulate and soft. All these things are directing you to something that they need. Whether that it's a calathea or a syndapsis and their leaves kind of curly, and even with our Hoya, they get wrinkly and really soft. So these are things that I think over time we have not disconnected, but have stopped listening to what plants need. So my very last one to my Pa Sam, to all of you that wish to embark on this journey, or you have and you're currently on your journey but wanting to get different insights on rare plants, I hope that these 8, pieces of advice or pieces of knowledge help you guys on your journey. I would love to hear anything that you guys also wish to share, that if you could speak to the plant community, what is your little treasures or your little knowledge that you found along the way? Feel free to share it below. The plant journey is such a beautiful one. I am currently, I think I started collecting in 2018. So what's that? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So it has been 6 years and I am still learning. There is so much to reveal itself. It is an absolute abundance, both in caring for the plants, but also with the people that surround this beautiful hobby. So I hope that this video helps you. Thank you for hanging out with me in the store, and I will see you guys in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!